Hello and welcome to Sci-Fi Christian. I'm Ben DeBono.
I'm Ben Kirkwald.
This is episode 7 of the Sci-Fi Christian Screening Room, and we are talking about Eyes Wide Shut today. This is our back-to-back recordings. We just finished talking about Paths of Glory.
Right.
So we haven't quite finished our beers from there.
Right, so you have to watch that movie to figure out which one we're...
Right, but we have another beer we're going to open in a few minutes because this might be a long conversation.
It's going to need to be.
Okay, so if you didn't listen to the Paths of Glory one, let me just set this up. So we didn't record for quite a long time because of schedule issues. In that time, you wound up watching on your own Eyes Wide Shut, and actually, I had just watched it
the night before.
So
yeah, then I texted you and I said, my wife agreed to watch this Stanley Kubrick movie.
Oh, you watched it with your wife?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
I said, Eyes Wide Shut, never seen it. She said, me neither. I said, Tom Cruise, Stanley Kubrick. She's like, well,
I like Tom Cruise.
So
okay, I'm going to need to hear more about that.
That was it. That was the conversation.
No, I want to hear about the conversation after the movie. Like, was it like, what the hell did you just put on? Like,
no.
Did she get up crying or something halfway through and walk out, or did she make it? Okay,
she made it.
Okay, well, I guess we
watched Game of Thrones.
That's true.
I mean,
that's true.
Game of Thrones probably worse than this.
I mean, this is a movie you kind of need to know what you're getting into.
And, yeah, I don't think we knew what we were getting into.
Right. So, yeah, Eyes Wide Shut. So, before we talk about that, you just kind of stumbling into this movie. So, Eyes Wide Shut is the movie that completely captivated me when it came to Stanley Kubrick. Like, I was kind of just starting to get into more classic film a few years ago, and I watched this movie, and I was just absolutely stunned. I had no idea what I had just seen. It completely caught me off guard in terms of what it meant and what it was doing and what it made me think about and all this stuff. And I did something I've very rarely done. I watched it again the next day. So I watched this on back-to-back days because this movie was just so captivating. It's not my favorite Stanley Kubrick movie. So I'm going to make you give your rankings at the end of this episode.
Right.
But in terms of me, 2001 is at the top. Barry Lyndon. Eyes Wide Shut is number 3. And then I would go with The Shining or Clockwork Orange. Those two swap places depending usually on which one I feel more in the mood for at a given time. And then Dr. Strangelove, Paths of Glory that we just watched, Full Metal Jacket, Lolita, and then the others. But yeah, so Eyes Wide Shut just stunned me. Like, this was a game changer for me. It completely blew away my expectations for what a movie could be and what a movie could do. And I've been completely obsessed with it ever since. I mean, I've read all the crazy conspiracy theories on the internet about it. I've read numerous books on Eyes Wide Shut. I've read the original novel that it was based on by Arthur Schnitzler from the 19th century. So Eyes Wide Shut is this is a movie I could talk about for hours. I mean, I for those of you, if you don't know what Letterboxd is like a social media website for movies. So I write reviews on there and stuff, and it's a lot of fun. So look me up on Letterboxd if you have a Letterboxd account. But I've written like 2 or 3 long reviews on Eyes Wide Shut, and every time I watch it, it's like there's different things I'm thinking about and different things I realize, and so this is a movie where there's really no end of it for me. So what did you think?
Gonna have to defer to you because I'm not exactly sure what I watched.
Okay. Yes.
So maybe we start and then I'll give you my. It's been a few weeks. I have a 6-month-old baby.
Right. We'll walk you through it.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So Eyes Wide Shut. Let's just walk through it maybe at a high level, and then we'll start back at the beginning and kind of go through step by step, right? So
that sounds like a good idea, yes.
We open the movie. Bill and Alice Harford are going to this party. They go to the party. They come back home. They have sex. The next day, they decide to take some marijuana, and they get talking about things. Alice confesses that she had, at one time last summer on vacation, she had seen a naval officer that she was instantly attracted to and was ready to throw away their whole marriage to go be with this guy. And then this sets Bill off on this whole nighttime journey where he flirts with numerous sexual encounters, culminating at the orgy at the Batman Begins mansion. I don't know if you recognize that. That's the same mansion in Batman Begins that is Wayne Manor. So that's a little Easter egg for you.
That is good. That's a good cut.
If you've seen Batman Begins, of course, it burns down at the end of that movie, so it's not in the other ones. But that is Wayne Manor in Batman Begins. And eventually, he shows up at this orgy. It's some kind of secret society with a ritual going on. We don't quite understand what it is. People wind up following Bill. There's people who maybe or maybe do or do not die as a result of the actions at this party. We're not sure. It's possible everything happens. It's possible nothing happens. Eventually, he confesses the whole thing to Alice. They reconcile, and it's the end of the movie.
Yeah, that's the level that I was on.
Right.
Right.
And so you're left asking yourself, not only what did I watch, but did I watch anything? Right?
Well, I felt like there was things that I was like, there was something there, but I don't know what it was.
Yes! Oh, that's so good. Like, that's so good, because that's what's so fascinating about this movie, is that everything is just, it's like you're almost there. You almost there. You almost grab it.
I should be able to understand why this scene is taking place.
Right.
That's how I felt as I was watching.
Okay, so let's talk about a couple things in terms of this movie. So I think we're going to watch Eraserhead next month, and when we watch Eraserhead, you're going to realize really quick that this is a surrealist movie. I don't know if you have watched any surrealist movies, or if you really understand quite what that means in terms of a genre at this point, but you'll get it within about 30 seconds of starting Eraserhead, especially the opening 5 minutes. Really out there, okay? So Eraserhead, David Lynch. David Lynch is all about surrealism, Twin Peaks, all that good stuff. Mulholland Drive, he deals in surrealism, the sense that the rules of reality are very flexible in a surrealist movie.
Okay.
If you want a sense of maybe, it's a little difficult, but you could say that there are some surrealist elements in a movie like Inception. Okay? In the sense that reality is flexible. Now, that's not a perfect comparison, because in Inception there are established rules, but there's also this sense in Inception, I assume you've seen Inception,
yes,
of we don't quite know what's real and what isn't. Okay?
Right, specifically when you get to the end. Right.
Specifically when you get to the end, and that changes your interpretation of the entire rest of the movie. And so, especially when you watch Inception for the second time, or third time, or whatever, you really start questioning what is and isn't real about what I'm seeing. Okay? Eyes Wide Shut is a soft surrealism. So a hard surrealism, like what we get from David Lynch, you're watching a David Lynch movie and anything can be happening, and if a midget shows up on a unicycle playing the trombone, you just roll with it because it's David Lynch. Like, that's not going to happen in a soft surrealist movie, okay? Everything kind of logically fits. But there's this same sense of what is real and what is not real in this movie.
Okay.
Let me give you an example.
Please.
Okay. So, Bill and Alice have their fight. He gets a call from his patient that his patient has died. He shows up. He talks to the patient. She eventually makes a pass on him, even though she has a fiancé. And he then leaves later on in the night. Okay. All very logical, what happens from point A to point B. But we fundamentally, at that point in the movie, tumbled down the rabbit hole, because if we start to look closer, we start to see that there are a number of things that are wrong about this scene. Okay, so the first thing is that Marion, who's the daughter of the patient who died, who hits on Bill in that scene, and her fiancé almost look like Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. Almost. They're like the people who got 4th place in the celebrity look-alike contest. Okay, that's how they look. Almost. They don't look like them, but their hair is both the same in both cases. When Bill enters the apartment, we have a series of shots of him opening the door, talking to the maid, walking down the hallway, and then into the room. When the fiancé enters the apartment a few minutes later, we have the exact same series of shots, but in reverse. In other words, if we see Bill from the right side, we see the fiancé from the left side. It's a mirror image of what happens when he walks down the hall. Here's where it gets even more fun, though. Alice's fantasy that she shared with Bill, of that if he, of the naval officer, if he asked me to go away with him, I would have been willing to throw away everything, right? Is the exact scenario that Marion presents to Bill. In other words, she presents herself as willing to throw away everything to go with him. Bill then becomes the subject of the fantasy in this Alice lookalike. Okay? Now, so we're heavy into surrealism at this point, but you don't see it. Like, this is something you have to watch the movie 2, 3, 4 times to see.
Okay.
So I've picked up on various elements of this every time I've watched the movie. And there's probably more in that sequence that I haven't seen yet.
Right.
And so what does that mean? That's the elusive part of this movie, is that it's always just out of reach. Just out of reach. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Let's open up the beer while you think about that one for a minute.
I gotta process what in the world I just listened to.
Exactly, but it all fits.
Yeah.
Okay.
It does.
So you introduced this.
So this is the one with the frog on it at your local liquor store.
Yes.
There's a couple of different ones. It's by Hop and Frog. This is the barrel-aged Oatmeal Imperial Stout, aged in whiskey barrels, which is awesome as usual.
Mm-hmm.
They are out of, do you know? I don't remember.
California, I think.
Probably.
Yeah.
We had this, Akron, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
We had this, Ben and I both waited outside of Surly Brewery, waiting for Surly Darkness to come out the next day. The guy sitting next to us, extremely nice.
Yeah.
Shared this bottle with us. Ben and I both had it, and we both said, this is like as good as Darkness is.
Not quite.
Well,
I think once we had Darkness later.
Well, no, that's...
Okay, sorry.
Disappointed. We thought this was as good as Darkness. Then we had Darkness. We realized that this is not as good, but it's
like
also
Diet Darkness.
it's half the price too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's like the fake Darkness that you can get all year long while you're waiting for Darkness to come out. And so we liked it. It was really good.
Yeah.
I don't think I've had it since. So
No, I haven't had it since.
it'll be.
But it is nice and dark.
It was like 2 in the morning when we had it.
That's
so.
true.
Hopefully it lives up to our 2 in the morning
That was an
expectations.
experience.
Right? Lots of lessons learned.
Yes, I think so. Okay, well let's sip this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is good.
This good.
Yeah, that's a good. You've either gone through all your bottles of Darkness or don't want to open another one. You're letting them age, and
Right.
you still kind of want the same deal.
This is it.
This is a good
Right.
in between.
Yeah.
You know, and for half the price, it's more than half as good. It's not
Yes.
as good, but it's more than half as good.
True.
So in terms of value to taste, this is a better deal than Darkness.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So you've got that. Then Bill goes on to the prostitute, Domino, who is also kind of this strawberry blonde, just like Nicole Kidman, or Alice in that case. So
Okay.
she also bears a resemblance there. the girl at the party that he rescues at the beginning, who is also allegedly the same one who rescues him at the orgy, is also kind of that complexion and everything. So you start to establish all of these patterns. What's interesting is that virtually everybody that Bill interacts with, from the time he fights with Alice on, reacts to him sexually. Okay, so you have Marion, you have Domino.
Yeah.
Before Domino, you have the frat boys who see him on the sidewalk and call him a faggot.
Right.
They bump into him, and so they react to him not in the sense of wanting to have sex with him, but they have a sexual reaction to him, or at least frame their reaction to him in sexual terms. You have the orgy, of course, itself. You have the hotel clerk, who is clearly hitting on him in a sexual way, and on it goes. And in each case, there's this sense of Bill is about to cross a threshold that is going to endanger him in a fundamental level. What's fascinating when you watch the orgy scene, well, there's so much about that scene that's fascinating, so I'm going to repeat that a few times during this, and we'll get back to more fascinating things, because they're going to blow your mind a few other times.
Oh, God.
Is that when the girl who's trying to rescue him, Mandy allegedly Mandy tells him that you're in great danger. She doesn't spell out what the danger is. So is the danger the secret society? Or is the danger Bill giving into the seduction that the society offers? The argument for the latter is that if the sequence of events is in that whole orgy scene, Bill walks into the mansion, he kind of sees what's going on, and then he looks up and he sees the masked figure in the tricorn hat, and they nod at each other. Okay? Bill goes off with Mandy for a while. They kind of split up. The tricorn hat guy shows up with another girl who's going to lead Bill away, presumably for sexual activity, though you could read it as that this is really an elaborate trap for him. Mandy intervenes and rescues Bill from that and tells him he's in great danger and he needs to get out. So you could read it as that was a trap where he's going to be led away and killed, or
That's
whatever.
what I read it as, yeah.
Or you could read it as that the real trap is him giving in to the sexual temptation at that point to destroy his marriage and forsake his marriage vows. Interestingly, that same trap is present with Domino, because we learn later that she's HIV positive. And so the scenes are connected to one another between the Domino scene and the orgy scene, because in both cases he is in, as Mandy puts it, great danger that he doesn't understand. And in both cases, if we read it the one way, the danger comes not through some external force, but through the violation of the marriage vows that Bill's being tempted to make.
And I think that's why Emily was okay watching it, because we came out of the end with it like, well, he didn't actually do it.
It's one of the most pro-marriage movies you will ever watch.
That's what I think that was our discussion at the end of the movie. Was like, but he didn't actually do anything. Like, he made the right choices and was led to, like, so I think that's why she was okay with it, was that nobody broke their marriage vows.
Right.
We're good.
So there's so much, I mean, this is going to be a little scattershot just because there's so many directions to go in with this movie. Thematically, let's go down that rabbit trail a little bit in terms of that this is a pro-marriage movie, right? So the tension in this movie is, will Bill forsake his marriage vows? Okay. Let's think horizontally again across Kubrick's career, filmography. I say again because we did that in the Paths of Glory video. It's one of the most interesting ways to look at Kubrick's movies. Which of the movies that you have seen does Eyes Wide Shut pair most closely with?
But what if I say it wrong?
No, just give me your guess.
I don't know. I feel like it...
If you were to take... So you've seen 2001,
yeah,
Paths of Glory,
Yeah.
Full Metal Jacket,
Yeah.
and The Shining.
Yeah.
In addition to this,
Right.
if you were to choose one of those four to say this is the cousin of Eyes Wide Shut, which one are you going to go with?
I would say either 2001 or The Shining.
Okay, that's a good answer. Interesting thing with The Shining. So Kubrick, this is an Arthur Schnitzler novella. He's a Viennese writer in the 19th century.
Right.
Kubrick had been trying to adapt Dream Story, which is the name of the novella, since the late 60s, early 70s. It hadn't been successful. The scenes in this movie where Tom Cruise is fantasizing or imagining with horror Alice having sex with a naval sailor were originally part of the script for The Shining. So Jack was going to fantasize or imagine Wendy having sex outside of their marriage. And so there's a very tight connection in Kubrick's mind, anyway, that we can establish there between where he went with this movie and where he went with The Shining. Now, let's think about that. Okay, so it's not just, is he just recycling scenes or is there something more? Well, I'm going to say there's something more because both movies have the exact same theme, which is horror as the destruction of the family. So I've always posited that Eyes Wide Shut is a horror movie. Really. It's fundamentally a movie that is about it's horror through the destruction of family. In the case of The Shining, we have the negative example of where the horror comes from a man who hates his family and therefore destroys it. In Eyes Wide Shut, it's a man who loves his family, but through a sense of betrayal that he experiences, comes close to betraying them and almost destroying them. The movies are mirror images of each other, which again parallels everything we see in Eyes Wide Shut, because there's a constant mirroring that goes on in Eyes Wide Shut. We already gave the one example. Dialogue is constantly echoed. So when somebody says something to a character, yes, they always say it back. Not always, but often throughout the movie. There's just literally dozens of examples of that taking place. There's a prominence of mirrors throughout the film, particularly at key moments where character in the famous scene where after the first party, Bill and Alice come home and they have sex, she makes eye contact with herself through the mirror. And so if you want to establish a through the looking glass motif, which by the way, Alice, you can go with that scene where she sees herself and what side of the looking glass are we on at that point, and on it goes. There's also a mirroring with the two sides of the movie. Okay, so the two party scenes mirror each other. Then all the other places that Bill visits have mirror images of each other. We have the first Domino visit, and then he goes back to the apartment and he finds out she has AIDS. We have the visit to the Over the Rainbow costume shop, or End of the Rainbow costume shop, and then the time he goes back. We have the first visit to Marianne, and where she tries to seduce him, and then he phones later to try and seduce her. We have mirroring images of Tom Cruise in his doctor's office. We have, it's all over the place. This movie is one of the most complex structures I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, because when I texted you, we were right at the beginning, you said watch for... What did you say?
Doubling.
Watch for doubling of everything, right?
Everything.
And I don't think I caught as much as you're discussing right
now. Well,
now.
I've watched the movie like half dozen times at this point, so...
Yeah.
I've seen it's taken time for me to get to this point with how much I see in this movie. Let's talk about the central orgy scene a little bit. Okay, because this scene blows me away. And this was the moment where it was like
him walking through the mansion?
Everything about this.
Or just
everything.
The moment he enters to
everything,
moment he leaves.
That scene just completely mesmerizes me in terms of what Kubrick pulls off there. Because it's the culmination of his whole career. Like we talked in the Paths of Glory video about the presence of ballroom scenes throughout Kubrick's filmography, and how they kind of all have this sense of here's the veneer, But then thematically he wants us to pick up on the sadistic evil side beneath the surface.
Right.
And then we get here to the final party scene in his career, and he pulls back the curtain, and there it is. And the music playing in this scene is so crucial when you understand what it is, because it's a backwards mass, which is what would be played at a black mass. So he pulls the curtain and says everything you've been seeing in Paths of Glory, in Lolita, in Barry Lyndon, in The Shining, in the first half of this movie, it's all satanic, pure and total. The destruction of the family is satanic. It's just this powerful moment in Kubrick's filmography where he pulls back the curtain and allows you to actually see it. And what's fascinating is that this is the scene where everybody's wearing masks, right? And so what is going on in this scene in terms of everybody wearing masks, where it's the inverse of all the other scenes, because in all the other scenes nobody's wearing physical masks, but everybody's wearing psychological masks or character masks or everything. There's a sense of where in the first party, I'm trying to think of the Sidney Pollack's character's name. I'm blanking on it. Ziegler, I think it is. And he goes upstairs to Ziegler, and there's the dead prostitute on the floor. And you look at that stairway that he ascends. I've been trying to re-find the link, but because I've googled the hell out of this movie, and there's. I think it's a William Blake painting where it's like a stairway to heaven or something like that corresponds almost exactly to the stairway in Ziegler's house where he ascends. And it's like this, because there's lights up and down. The whole wall is just covered with lights. And so there's this ascent into paradise feel that is given by the Ziegler staircase at the initial party. But you go up the staircase to heaven and there's death at the top. And we get this, then we see that actually revealed when we get to the orgy in the second half, is that what appeared to be heaven, what appeared to be the culmination of what we want, this ascension to paradise, is really a descension to death. And on it goes.
Right. I mean, I knew that you were going to blow my mind when we started talking about this stuff, but... So is there a theory then about this movie that nothing takes place after that scene?
Yeah, I mean, so what actually happens in this movie? Like, if we were to construct the reality of this movie, keeping in mind that the original novel is called Dream Story, okay? What is the reality of this movie? Like, what actually happens? There's things that don't work. How does the mask get there? The end.
Yeah.
How does the mask get back there? Now you could say it's the society that's, they're blackmailing him. So you could come up, this is where it's soft surrealism, because you can come up with logical but improbable solutions to all of this.
Right, or unrealistic.
Unrealistic. Why does Alice have, when he comes back home immediately after the orgy, and he wakes her up and she tells him his dream, the dream is as though she is one of the women at this party, right? Put a pin in that one, because we're going to come back to that in a few minutes when we start talking about conspiracy theories.
All right.
And this, because man, does that get wild. So put a pin in that. But, it's why does she essentially have the same dream as him?
Right.
Let's talk a little bit, too, about space in this movie. So the way that I figured it, there are at least 3 major areas of space in this movie, or types of space in this movie. Okay, space meaning the area, not outer space, of course.
Large,
but the area.
Medium, and small?
No, not quite that. Number 1 is the... forgive me because I know this has negative connotations in current parlance, but the safe space, if you will.
That's fine.
It's like the apartment and everything that they're in at the beginning. This is a safe space. This is a space that darkness can't intrude. But constantly, there's this eerie blue light leaking in from outside. If you watch the early scenes and all the scenes in the Hartford apartment, there's this blue glow outside of the apartment at all times, and the scenes where they're discussing things like her dream and things are getting worse, the blue glow really moves in, and so it's almost this you could almost establish a theory of kind of a Lovecraftian cosmic horror going on outside, where the old gods are restless and they're moving into the apartment. And so there's this sense of there's this intruding evil outside the space, but it's going to move in. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is the fake space, right? So when Bill is walking around downtown New York City, if you pay really close attention, or even not that close of attention, you'll realize that everything looks incredibly fake. All the blocks end within a block or two of each other. All the streets end within a block or two. This is supposedly downtown New York City.
Right, they all T. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They all T.
Yes.
And on a filmmaking level, this is because it was filmed in a studio, right, with a set. And some people would say, well, Kubrick didn't want to film on location, which he didn't.
Really? He wasn't a location kind of guy?
Oh no! All of his films from Doctor Strange Levant were filmed within 30 miles of his home in London. I mean, Full Metal Jacket. He imported palm trees from Vietnam to England to film Full Metal Jacket.
Don't you think with a perfectionist like Stanley Kubrick, but he's trying to imply fakeness, but
yes,
he would want to. Assuming that he didn't want to, he would have gone to New York because he wanted the long shots there.
Well, I mean, he did. He would send second units over to do it. There is footage in New York from this movie, but in terms of the major stuff where he's filming it, it's all on a soundstage in London, and it looks like it. Like when you watch the movie, if you watch the movie with that knowledge in mind, you'll get it like that. It's so obvious these sets. This is it's a big set, but it's a small set in terms of what it's trying to portray.
Right.
And the thing is, you watch a movie from the 40s or 50s, and it's really, you watch Singing in the Rain. It's obvious that they're on a set, and you forgive it because it's the 40s, and fine, we didn't have the budget to do all this. This is the 90s, and it's Stanley Kubrick. I mean, he had the budget to do this. This is he had everybody sign on. This movie holds the world record for the longest continuous shoot in movie history.
Right.
He had carte blanche at this point. And so if he wanted to build a set and disguise it as downtown New York City and make it look realistic, he could have and would have done it.
Right.
So it looks like either an old movie or amateur hour. Well, this is the greatest director of all time in the late 90s, and there's no way that either one of those is possible. So you have this fake space where it gives the illusion of that you can go wherever you want, but you're really a rat in a maze. You're going from place to place. Then there's the labyrinth. Okay? Labyrinths are very important to Stanley Kubrick in his movies. I would argue that all of his movies contain one labyrinth or another. The most obvious being The Shining, of course.
I was going to say, that's a whole nother,
But, we just watched Paths of Glory, and there's, the labyrinth is not a physical space in that movie, but it's very much a metaphorical space of that we are trying to navigate ourselves through a political labyrinth that we cannot get out of. And you see this most strongly, in two places. You see it first in the Ziegler Party, where he's moving from room to room to room with these girls, and he even says at one point, where exactly are we going exactly, which is the exact quote, because he repeats exactly in there twice, which is another doubling thing. But there's a sense of that he's being led through this mansion and we don't know where we are, and that he and Alice are being separated and seduced independently in here because they're in the labyrinth and they've been separated from each other. And that strains their marriage bonds. The more interesting place, though, is the Somerset Mansion, where the orgy takes place, because the editing in here, as we're following Bill from room to room, we have a bunch of fade cuts where the room fades from one to another, and so we don't even, it's almost as though the cinematography can't keep up with the labyrinth. We have to fade from one room to the other. And so we wind up in the most complex labyrinth in the film. Then the use of space gets really interesting when Bill goes to talk to Ziegler at the end of the movie, because on a surface level, the pool room where he's having this conversation matches the safe space location of the apartment, with the sense of that this is a room where we understand it, it's a contained space, but there's this eerie blue light on the outside. But if we're paying attention, we know that it's actually connected to the labyrinth of the Ziegler party from earlier in the movie, which is one of our 2 labyrinth locations. And so the Ziegler party, where they're being led from room to room to room, they're being separated, seduced independently. We have the staircase to heaven that's actually death at the top. And so it's the same location.
Oh,
he's back in the same location.
Oh,
and so
it's like the same house.
Yes, it's the same house. So it appears to be a safe space, but we know it's the labyrinth again. The costume shop is also a labyrinth, because it appears to be very well organized, where we can gather our geography, and then they open the door to where all the costumes are, and we follow this long hallway, and then there's a conference room, and you can't get your bearings in there. And so we have these 3 different types of spaces in the movie.
Interesting.
Yes.
And I feel like the use of fake space is not as prominent as the other ones. I mean,
yeah, but it's not as prominent. But we revisit the same maze again and again. When you think about the locations that are in this maze, so if we take that set as our fake space, Domino's apartment is there. The nightclub that Nick Nightingale was at, his hotel, the coffee shop. It's like this. Even the costume shop is all in this space, and so it's like the trap that Tom Cruise is continually driven back to.
Interesting.
He can't escape it. And then there comes the toy shop at the end. What do we make of that space? Is that a labyrinth? Is it safe because it feels comforting? Is it a trap where we're not quite sure how to get out of it? And how you interpret the toy shop in terms of space is going to tell you a lot about how you interpret the actual movie and what happens at the end.
I interpret it as a safe space.
Okay. So let me ask you this then. And this was when I was Googling around the day after I saw this for the first time.
Yeah.
This is what made me go back and rewatch it.
Yeah.
Because I started Googling around at the end, and I came across this question. And I hadn't even considered it. What happens to his daughter at the end of the movie? Now we're going to start to put on our tinfoil hats and move into conspiracy theory place.
Okay. Well,
Okay, so let's just walk through this scene step by step.
Please,
the final scene of the movie. They're
Right.
walking through the toy shop. We
Yes.
follow them. We reach a point where they stop, and Helena is looking at some toys.
Right.
And then they begin talking to each other, and it's all close-ups to the end until we hit end credits. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing suspicious so far, right?
Right.
Okay. The final shot of Helena, she picks up a toy and says, "What do you think of this, Mommy?" or something like that. She puts it down, and then she moves further down the aisle. Okay? There are 2 men at the end of the aisle who are also walking away, and she could be interpreted as following them. Okay, you could come up with a weird fan theory there, that she's going away with those 2 men. The 2 men are sitting at a table at the beginning of the movie at Ziegler's party at the bottom of the stairway to heaven. Exact same actors. They show up again at the toy store at the end, and Helena follows them. And we cut away, she looks back at her parents, we cut away from her, and it's just close-ups of them for the rest of the movie. What happens to Helena at the end of this movie? Has she been kidnapped by the sex cult?
Well, Jesus, man.
Okay, here's where it gets worse.
No, it can't get worse than that.
Are you familiar with MK Ultra?
Nope.
Okay, MK Ultra is a real CIA project from the 70s involving mind control.
Mm-hmm.
There are references to MK Ultra throughout Stanley Kubrick's career, most notably in Clockwork Orange.
Because he used to work for the CIA.
Yeah, that's okay. So yes, I told you we got our tinfoil hats on now. There's also Illuminati references all throughout Eyes Wide Shut.
Okay.
In terms of symbolism and all of that. There's also the fact that Stanley Kubrick died literally days, within a week of when he first screened the final version of this movie, which has led to conspiracy theories about whether or not he actually died of natural causes or was killed. So, you can go as far as you want with tinfoil hats at this point. You can say, there's nothing here. You can say, there's a story level thing here, where Helena is being led away by these two men who appeared at the beginning of the movie. Which, even that seems like a stretch to me, except for the fact that it's the same two actors. And I've watched the clips again and again and again, and it's the same. I'm convinced of that. I don't know what that means. Or, you can go even farther and say that there's a general theme throughout Kubrick's career of government mind control, and him wanting to expose that. And you can go even further and say that the original cut of Eyes Wide Shut had additional scenes that were eventually excised and destroyed by the studio after Kubrick's death. So adjust your tinfoil hat accordingly.
So with the last one, I would say that there has to be, if he screened it, then there has to be witnesses to extra scenes that...
Tom Cruise,
No.
Nicole Kidman, the Warner Brothers executives. That's it. Those are
who have all been very well paid since.
Exactly. Okay.
No, but I'm saying, when he screened the movie the first time...
That's who he screened it for. That was the group.
That was the group?
That was the group.
It wasn't like a full... It was just that...
This was, here's my initial cut.
What do you think? And
That
they
was
said,
it.
great, you're going to die in a couple days.
We know for a fact that the studio tampered with this movie. We know for a fact.
Why?
Because it originally was given an NC-17 rating. In the original cut of the movie, they inserted digital cloaked figures into the orgy scene to cover up a couple shots in order to get an R rating. We know they edited it. We know that they tampered with... That's a fact.
Yes. Okay.
Now, I'm not saying I believe this, but I'm playing devil's advocate for the tinfoil hat crowd.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go one step farther down the radio.
We are 5 steps down here. I don't know if you've seen Inception, but like 4 steps is the max, okay? That's...
Scientology.
That's
Let's talk about Scientology.
No, okay, so let's talk about Scientology. The fact that... Okay, so Tom Cruise isn't going to crack because of Scientology. Is that
Hang on.
there?
No. Gets worse.
No, it can't.
Shortly before making this movie, one of Kubrick's daughters became a Scientologist and
stop.
cut off all contact with the family.
Stop.
At the time this movie was made, Tom Cruise was not the Scientologist that he would later become. It was only after making Eyes Wide Shut that he became super Scientologist that we all know and love. And the church was allegedly unhappy with the amount of time that he spent in England and therefore away from Scientology while making Eyes Wide Shut. This is why I'm obsessed with this movie. Like, you can go so crazy on this movie. But you've watched Room 237. Room 237 has nothing on the way that you could go with Eyes Wide Shut.
Well, they refer back to it in 237.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, so, processing, give me a minute here.
Uh-huh.
Death seems premature.
7 days after finishing his final movie.
It is 7 days.
7 days.
Okay, that seems a little odd.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but then okay, so we have Nicole Kidman.
Yes.
We're assuming that Tom Cruise isn't going to talk because nobody's going to believe him at this point anyways.
Yeah.
So, and Warner Brothers, they're getting paid millions of dollars.
Yep. They might be part of the cult.
Right.
Yes.
Let's assume that they are part of this,
Yes.
like, at least philosophical...
The Illuminati sex cult with MK Ultra mind control.
Right.
Yes.
So now we're left with Nicole Kidman.
Really easy to silence one person.
Yeah, isn't it, though? You just keep giving her roles.
Threaten her children, whatever you want.
Right?
Right? Because if that interpretation is correct, then you have to take in the Helena being kidnapped at the end as part of this, which is a direct threat to children. Again, I don't believe this necessarily, but it is wildly consistent. Like, you can put together a completely unproven but consistent theory for Kubrick being murdered and this movie being an attempt to expose evil forces
In the industry?
in the world.
In the world or in the industry?
Both. I mean, this would go farther than that. I mean, but
if they were trying to expose it in the world, I think movie executives would say fine. Well, that's not true. We'd have to put ourselves in 1990 shoes, where that might not be considered okay. But if the movie were delivered today, it's okay to expose it to the world. It's not okay to say that we were involved with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm still not...
I'm not buying it either. I do think that the Scientology angle is interesting a little bit because of the fact that his daughter...
I think that's purely coincidental.
His daughter joined up, cut off all contact with the family.
Purely coincidental.
Well, sure.
One of those two things has to be coincidental. Logically, it has to be. Either Stanley Kubrick just happened to die 7 days after...
Oh, yeah.
Logically.
So, I don't think Stanley Kubrick was murdered, but I think he could have been murdered. Does that make sense? Like, I don't necessarily buy the theory.
Right, no.
But I don't think... It's not the craziest theory I've ever heard, either.
But you can't... I feel like you can't believe both. If you believe both...
Have you been on the internet?
Okay, those people are weird, though.
Yes.
As we say this on the internet.
You're right. Yeah, those people.
Those people. Those crazy people. I don't know. It's one or the other, I think. You either have to believe that... I don't know. There's a lot of things that have to fall exactly into place.
That's the flaw with all conspiracy theories, is that they rely on too much. So...
Yeah.
I'll tell you
one out of every 1,000 conspiracy theories is true.
Right.
Because there's a 1 in 1,000 chance that 10 things fall into place.
Exactly.
Like, it just...
Yeah.
Mathematically, that's... Well,
so,
actually, anyways.
In terms of what I actually think with all this, the coincidence between the two men at the beginning of the party and at the end is too much to ignore, in my mind. Like, that has to be intentional.
At this point in Stanley Kubrick's career, yes.
Yes. I don't know entirely what that means, but it has to be intentional. It's at least something to let people pick up on and kind of tear into, okay, is this perpetuating this to the next generation or whatever? So I buy that. In terms of the timing of his death, I'm going to say I don't believe he was murdered, but if it was to ever come out that he was, I wouldn't be shocked. Okay. I don't think that Warner Brothers I think it's Warner Brothers, either that or Fox.
Oh man, in one of those ways we're gonna get sued.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think they edited anything in the movie outside of inserting the digital guys to get down to an R rating. But again, wouldn't shock me if they did. I do kind of buy that Kubrick had at least a critique of well, I know he had a critique of secret societies in mind, and that Scientology was foremost in his mind of that. I'll buy that because of what was going on with his daughter.
Right.
I'll also buy the fact that the Church of Scientology was not happy about this movie because of that.
Correct.
And I can even buy that maybe that contributed to them trying to bring Tom Cruise closer to the fold, which eventually led to the end of his marriage, because that was allegedly pressured by Scientology. So I can buy that angle. Beyond that, I don't think Kubrick made movies as a sort of tell-all. In other words, like, if you want to go really tinfoil hat, that Kubrick's been faking moon landings and all this other crap for 50 years, and then that this was his confession, and then they killed him for it. I mean, that to me is just that's too much. But the evidence is there if you want to believe that too. It's not insane.
It's like there's a movie like that where it's like I can't remember what it is, but it's like the guy dies, but it's like all this stuff happened, but we don't know if it really happened.
Right.
Like, make a movie off of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Maybe that was his intent.
Maybe.
That somebody would make a movie of Stanley Kubrick, but like make it Stanley Kubrick-y.
Yes.
Like,
one interesting conspiracy theory on Stanley Kubrick regarding the moon landing is that we did actually land on the moon, but that the footage that was broadcast was fake because we couldn't get reliable footage. So that's an interesting twist on the theory, is that we did actually land on the moon, but that Kubrick faked the moon landing footage that we saw. So make of that what you will. Alright, so where are you with Eyes Wide Shut after the better part of an hour discussing
I don't even
this?
know.
Just brains are leaking out of your ears.
Right?
Yes.
I don't know. I have to watch it again before I can
Exactly. You have to watch it. You just start watching it.
No, but
watch it again and again and again, and then you.
But I think that. But then you're going down the rabbit hole the other way with obsession about.
I know. It's inescapable. This movie.
Well,
it's inescapable. This
but
movie
you don't want to be.
I'm telling you, if they make a Room 237 of Eyes Wide Shut, I'll sign up. I can be one of the crazies on there. It's like, I've watched The Shining 2,000 times, and I know what it means. I've neglected my family for the last 10 years to rewatch The Shining.
But if you say that about this movie...
Exactly. It becomes another way that the tendrils get... This movie wraps you up so you neglect your family, which is really the theme of this movie, is the destruction of the family.
So maybe the point is of the movie that you...
See, now you're getting into the spirit. It's like this elaborate 4D chess conspiracy theory of Stanley Kubrick to get you to realize what a horrible husband you are. This is the whole thing.
Be a good husband.
All right, so let me rank the 5 Stanley Kubrick movies.
All right. So after first viewing of this one,
yes.
Okay, let's review all of this. So we have 2001.
Yep.
We have The Shining.
Yep.
Full Metal Jacket.
Yep.
Paths of Glory.
Yep.
And this one.
Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. Well, I know what's at the bottom, but I'm gonna go.
Are you going best to worst or worst to best?
I'm going best to worst.
Okay.
So best movie, Shining.
Okay.
Second, I'd go Full Metal Jacket.
Okay.
Third, I'd go Eyes Wide Shut.
Okay.
Then Paths of Glory.
Holy crap! The greatest movie of all time, and you made it 5 on your list.
2001. If there was 10, I'd put it 10.
I'm ashamed of you. We're gonna watch. We are going to watch 2001 in the next year because 50th anniversary in April.
Correct. So
Yes.
that's probably the April movie then.
Oh yeah.
And so then I've watched it once, and so you can just talk through the whole thing for me.
Yeah,
because
I'm ashamed of you.
I'm not ashamed of me because that's where it belongs right now.
2001 is the greatest movie ever made.
That's not true.
So I'm
at all.
gonna rank the 5 movies you've seen. 2001, Eyes Wide Shut, The Shining, Paths of Glory, Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, we have disagreements about good movies.
No. You just see. You've only watched 2001 once. That's your problem.
That's all I needed. At the second time,
Not in April. Not in April.
but in order to be a good movie,
No.
well, no, you
No.
don't.
You don't even finish that thought. Because I'll just eviscerate you. You have to be able to like it on the first time. Like, what are you smoking? You know how many great movies you have to watch like 2 or 3 times to really get it?
But you have to enjoy it on the first time.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
I feel like on some level you need to enjoy
No,
a movie.
you don't. Absolute nonsense. Who cares what you enjoy?
The first time?
Yeah.
But then that's gonna be a whole different conversation.
You don't have to enjoy anything on the first time. First of all, what you enjoy doesn't matter. People enjoyed Michael Bay. You know,
Yeah.
people enjoy Transformers on the first time.
True.
So what does that tell you?
Well, I'm saying that good movies hold up, but you need to enjoy.
No. Good movies improve.
All right, that's okay. Good movies improve. Fair.
Yeah.
I will grant you that. But maybe I don't know.
First time I watched 2001, I didn't get all the way through it. I turned it off. I was bored.
Yeah, amen.
Exactly. And now I think it's the greatest movie ever made.
Well, it's gonna take a while to move up the list.
Yes.
Well, in April we'll reassess.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic.
Do I need to watch it in between then?
Probably. Like once a month between now and then.
I'm not gonna know what's going on.
What? You don't know what's going on in 2001?
Well,
It's the easiest movie in the world to... People talk about, oh, it's so confusing. It's not confusing.
There's
like,
literally nothing
The
happening.
monkeys turn into humans. The humans turn into Star Children. It's very simple.
Right. It just takes 2.5 hours to tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
That just...
Michael Bay movies take 3 hours to tell. And
Yeah,
they're
there's a
even
lot
more
more going
simple.
on.
No, there's nothing going on. There's nothing going on.
Well, visually, there's a lot more going on.
No, there's not.
2001
2001 is one of the most complex visual movies ever made.
So in April, when we watch the movie, we
Yes.
should have a conversation about visual... We'll watch Transformers, and then we'll
No,
watch...
I'm not watching Transformers. You could watch Transformers.
I'll watch it, and then I'll argue for Transformers against that.
That might be
I
the
would
end.
rank Transformers below 2001.
Thank God. Thank God.
But I'm definitely going to argue for it in April.
All right, I have to pee after this beer, so let's wrap this up.
Right.
Eyes Wide Shut. You should watch it, rewatch it, rewatch it, rewatch it.
Yeah.
Get obsessed with it. Devote your entire life to it.
Right. Not your family, because
Right.
that's what the movie's all about.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
All right, I'm Ben DeBono.
I'm Ben Kirkwald.
Yeah, goodbye.